I think we're on. Welcome to the Buffet Show, episode number 2, here today in Oakland at the Urban Peace Movement headquarters with Nicole Lee.
Hey, everybody.
Nicole Lee is the founding executive director of the Urban Peace Movement. She is a fourth-generation Oakland resident who has spent the past 20 years in labor and community organizing and youth development work with a focus on economic justice and juvenile justice issues. Some of the campaigns she's worked on has been Books Not Bars campaign, through the Ella Baker Center, the Silence the Violence campaign, which Nicole co-founded under the Ella Baker Center, and the Revive Oakland campaign, a coalition facilitated by the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy. Prior to being the executive director here, she's worked in such organizations as Unite Here, Local 2850, the East Bay Alliance for a Sustainable Economy, as well as the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights. The Buffet Show welcomes you.
Thank you.
Nicole, hello. How are you doing?
I'm honored to be here.
No. It's my pleasure to come out here to Oakland to do this interview with you.
Awesome. Thanks.
You know, part of what I want to do with this show is to, you know, kind of showcase folks that are doing things in their communities, and whatever capacity, right? And so what we want to do is showcase that, show it to the world, cool. And we'll kind of get through it because I want to. Part of the show is more about the process. It's
awesome.
Not what you're doing now, because we want to know more about how you got to here.
Cool.
And so,
great.
You know, from the get-go then. So how did you get to this point? You know, was there a moment, you know, in your life where there was this, you know, a person, event that kind of gave you that little impetus to go the direction that you're going?
Well, I would say, you know, and this is going to be something I think I talk about a lot, which is just my love for the city of Oakland. So I grew up here in Oakland, California, and like you said, my family's been in Oakland for 4 generations. So we think since the late 1800s.
Okay.
Which I think, you know, speaks to the long history that Chinese Americans have had in California and here in the Bay Area. And so I think Oakland is a big motivation for, like, you know, in some ways it's like my moral compass, I think. And so I think it's a big motivation for the path that I chose in my life. But there was a moment, you know, I'm a community organizer, and people have trouble understanding what that is. So like my mom tells people, you know, like my aunt, when I first started working, would say, so what is Nicole doing? And my mom would say, I don't know, I think she's some kind of like professional activist or something, you know, like okay. I sit in a room.
That's all right. It's professional, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like I sit in a room with a bunch of picket signs, you know, and then they call, they're like, oh, the whales, and then you get the whale picket sign and go out. Right. But you know, I think being a student at UC Santa Cruz was one of the things that really influenced me to decide that I wanted to become a community organizer, and first an activist. So I grew up here in Oakland, and I love my city. And
this is something I kind of want to get to.
Yeah.
You know, if you're on Nicole's feeds, you know, Instagram, Facebook, you know, Oakland is like your world. I mean,
it is my world.
The meaning of Oakland to you is substantial. Tell me a little bit more about what Oakland means to you.
Well, so I would say for me, like I said, it's like my moral compass. It's also like, you know, it's my family history. It's where my roots are, really. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a city where we really have this spirit of fighting back, like being backed into a corner and, you know, and coming out fighting, coming out swinging. That's really like the spirit of Oakland. And I think it's, you can see it in our history, right? So like, I think that's the spirit that when I look back at the history of like the Black Panther Party being founded here, that's what I see. And you know, they were you know, a bunch of young folks. They were college students at Merritt College, And they inspired a movement all over the whole country, just here from Oakland. And, Oakland's like a city of 400,000 people. It's not like New York or Chicago. It's kind of a small city, you know what I mean? So I think that's, even the Raiders, even though I know that's controversial right now, because they're moving, but, I think in the time the time they're known for, it was sort of like this fighting spirit and people willing to think way outside the box and change the game. Like football's never been the same since that era of the Raiders. And the movement's never been the same since the Black Panther Party. So when I think about Oakland, I think about people who, just have this spirit of determination and who are, game changers. They put something out and then the world is never the same after that.
Mm-hmm. Now just kind of stepping back a little bit more too, then was there a person that had been quite influential to you in terms of kind of leading you that direction to where you're at in terms of community activism?
Well, I think it was more a moment than a person.
Okay.
So for me, I grew up here in Oakland, and one of the things we're most proud of is the diversity, right? So this was in the time I grew up here, this was a majority people of color city. So I went to Oakland Public Schools my whole life, and I just took for granted that every classroom was, completely diverse. Like in my elementary school, we had as many Asian American kids as we did Native American kids. Okay. And so that's just the way I grew up. And I got to Santa Cruz. I knew that higher education was not going to be the same as my school. But, it was one of those things that you don't really know until you see it. You know what I mean? And I got to UC Santa Cruz and I was in complete culture shock. It was the opposite of, I'd been in every classroom I'd ever been in was 90% people of color, if not 100%. You know what I mean? And I got to Santa Cruz, it was the opposite. Okay. And I was kind of flipping out my first quarter. What is this, And then I don't forget, but a few months into it is when they announced that the UC Regents were saying, we don't have racism anymore in California, and there's no need for it. In fact, the policies that were put in place in the 60s and 70s to actually help increase diversity on campus are actually reverse racism, right? And so that's when they were threatening to take away affirmative action.
So that was Proposition.
That was it turned into Prop 209, exactly. It was a very harsh political time for people of color in California at that time. But it pissed me off. And so that was why I became an activist. That was the thing that made me say, you know what? Not enough people that went to my school ended up at four-year universities, right? In Santa Cruz, you could see that in the student body. And at the same time that I was experiencing that, it was like this, we don't need to increase diversity. And, so that I was angry, and that's what led me down this path.
Okay. And so then how were you able to kind of channel that, you could call it anger, you could call it that, that motivation, that passion, to, once leaving Santa Cruz, coming back to your hometown? Why was that so important to you?
Yeah.
Rather than, going out to, some other place, right?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it was never a question. That's the thing that I think I felt as a student activist. I loved it and I learned so much and, built lifelong friends. And it was the right thing to do. But I always felt disconnected, okay, what about all the folks that didn't make it up here to this school? And I just felt like the real justice issues were actually at home. And so I was really actually excited to come back and think about how would I take what I learned from being a student organizer and a student activist and really enact that in my own community. And I also just think Oakland is this magic portal. I know this sounds crazy. Maybe it's a vortex or something, but it's a place where you wouldn't think, the Panthers, again, are an example of this. It's a place where you focus on something relatively small and you do it, and then somehow it has such even if it's unintended, a greater influence somehow. So I don't know if I had a strategic, sort of thought about that when I came back to Oakland. It was more that I was following my heart. But I do think that what we do here in Oakland matters, not just for Oakland, but for the whole country. And yeah, so it just so happens that this is also my home.
And so like when you got out of Santa Cruz, and what led you to organizations such as the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Van Jones organization, right? At the time, and kind of using them in terms of kind of developing yourself. What led you to that organization and the organizations after that?
Sure. Well, I would just say that for me it was exciting. It was a really hard political time in the 90s.
Should I answer that?
No.
All right.
That's okay. Sorry, guys. It was a hard political time, right? You mentioned Prop 187, Prop 209, the 3 strikes laws passed, right around the same time, at the sort of like the late 90s, early 2000s. Prop 21 passed, and so on the positive side, it really activated young people of color all over the state of California, and so there was this like really exciting, vibrant movement of people my age, like springing up all over, like in LA and Oakland and Central Valley and like all over the state. And so I got inspired by that, caught up in it, and that's what led me to meeting Van at some training or meeting, and just wanting to be part of that movement, and so when I started working at Ella Baker Center, I just think I was so excited to be working with other young people of color who had a vision for, a more just and equitable world, in a world where we didn't have to, we didn't have to take the kinds of attacks that were happening against our communities. So that's what led me to it.
Oh, okay. And then after you had left there, then where did you go? You went to another organization?
Yeah, I actually started out as a union organizer, doing worker organizing with the hotel workers, which was, I think, one of the most valuable experiences that I've ever had in my life, and also like one of the most inspiring, places I've ever been able to do this kind of work in.
Now, how was it inspiring to you?
Because, sometimes people who I think become, lifelong activists, I don't know. I just think it's a little different when you're working with workers who are doing kind of like jobs that are, that people in society think of as sort of everyday jobs. And so like, for example, in the hospitality industry, probably 2/3 of those jobs are jobs that people actually don't even think about. So like you go stay at a hotel and, you leave your room or you hang the tag out to say, clean my room or whatever. And then someone comes in and cleans it and you may never actually even see that person. But there are these incredible women, it makes me want to cry actually, who are housekeepers, the majority of whom are women of color. Many of them are immigrant women. And they are hard, like no joke, hardcore. They get down on their knees and scrub out bathtubs and, flip mattresses. I mean, the work that they're doing is really intense work, and it's like hidden. You know what I mean?
Right. And they don't get paid enough.
And they don't get paid enough. And what's interesting is in every union fight that I was like a part of with that union, the housekeepers always led the charge. They are like, those women are incredible. And so it was just this time in my life where I got to see like how when you're walking down the street and you see somebody, you're like, how much we underestimate the, people that we're passing on the street, because you wouldn't know that this woman who's, maybe in her 50s, who's a housekeeper, she's like a fighter, you know what I'm saying? Right. And like these women that I just saw, they were willing to take on the boss and tell the truth and take risks and get up on a mic and, you know what I mean, and risk sometimes their own job, their own employment status to do that for themselves, but also because they believe that the people they work with also deserve dignity. And it was just it was just incredible. I learned just humbling, and I learned so much about determination and solidarity from the workers. It's really incredible.
And so then, you kind of talked a little bit about just being humbled in the work that you do. What other struggles have you encountered? And I want to get to that too, in terms of in your development of being a leader in a leadership role, how you were able to kind of navigate through, when you talk about housekeepers and kind of having your eyes open to this whole entire world, to where these are folks that, like you said, you walk down the street and they just pass by and you don't even really know them. How was that in terms of, for you, once you kind of see that, the struggles that you encountered, how were you able to kind of negotiate that, as you're kind of developing into the leader you've
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think organizing at the end of the day is really a process of, so there's a partner organization that we work with called OCO, and they have these organizing principles. And I think the first principle is that in their principles, it says the first revolution is internal. And so I actually think that organizing for myself, but also for many people, is really a process in which you come to know your own self-worth and dignity. And in the process of that, realize that you and people like you, or people in your community, people in your family, are actually worth fighting for. Sorry, it makes me cry just to think about it. But so that's been my process as well. But it's also the thing that inspires me to stay in the work, because I watch young people and I watch people of color from my own community go through a process where they're like, you know what? Like, I actually am deserving of dignity. I am deserving of respect. I am deserving of, $15 at least or more an hour. I am deserving of living in a community where I can walk down the street and not feel like somebody, like a police car is going to be trailing me and watching my every move, where I'm not being terrorized. I deserve that. You know what I mean? And then are willing to fight for it. And so for me, that's also the thing I've had to navigate, is I think it's an infinite ongoing process. And so I think, every day I'm learning more about sort of like my own value and my own self-worth, and, getting to a place, I think all of us are getting to a place where, you can say, like, I really like myself. And I think that as people of color and as people from marginalized communities or people who grew up in low-income communities, I think that part of what's so damaging about the experiences of being like oppressed or marginalized is not just the sort of structural things about it, but it's also like what it does to us inside. Like, if you live in a school system where you're using books that, people 2 generations before you were using, it kind of sends this subtle message to you, like, you're not worth investing in. You know what I'm saying? And we internalize those messages.
And it may not be even conscious of,
That's right.
Because they're so used to it.
Absolutely.
Right? It becomes the norm.
It becomes the norm. And you start to sort of think like, oh, well, I guess I'm just not that important, or like the people in my neighborhood are just not that important, or things can't actually be different. And that's, to me, the most damaging part of oppression. One of my friends and colleagues, his name is Sean Jinray. He's a professor at San Francisco State, and he talks about that, that one of the biggest sort of things that gets lost in the process of oppression is hope, is that we lose hope. And I would say also that we lose our sense of self. And so I think that organizing first is actually a process of reclaiming that, or reclaiming our own self-worth, our own dignity. Audre, people always quote this Audre Lorde quote about self-care. But, I think one way to think about, so Audre Lorde said that self-care is not self-indulgence. it's self-preservation, and that's an act of political warfare. And she was saying that obviously in a particular context. But I think another way to think about that maybe could be like the 2017 way to think about that is that, like, in some ways self-love is like the best revenge, right? Because, and you know, you see memes like that, and I think people are mostly talking about like relationships, like, oh, when I love myself, my ex, you know, that's the
right.
But you could also take it to think about like society, that like really self-love is the best revenge against oppression, because part of the way that oppression works is that it makes you think that you're not worth it anymore. You know what I mean?
Breaks you down.
It breaks you down. Yeah.
Right.
So I think that if we can understand that, you know, I think in the movement we have to take that more seriously, that part of it. You know, inspiring people, giving people a sense of who they really are. Yeah.
Now, you know, what I admire about you is that, and a lot of those who are community activists, where they just immerse themselves into the fight movement. You kind of talked a little bit about the self-love.
Yeah.
I want to know what Nicole Lee does. The kind of, you don't have to get too specific, but in terms of just like, you know, what does, you know, Nicole Lee do to kind of unwind, kind of just, you know, feel normal?
I mean, I'm just laughing because I struggle with that, to be honest with you, you know,
right.
Because the work, I think a lot of people go into this kind of work like as activists and organizers, and we think we don't need anything else, you know, because this is our passion and this is what feeds us. But that's not actually true. And, you know, you can't just do one thing. Like if you really like working out and you just work out all day long, like you're going to have problems in your life. Right. You know what I mean? Or like, and so it's the same with organizing. You can't just do that. And it is a struggle because, you know, we're always understaffed. We're up against opponents who have like, you know, like 10 or 20 or 100 times more resources. Right. And we're struggling, you know, little grassroots organizations. Sometimes we, you know, some of us have funding, some people don't have, you know, people are volunteering. Right. And so there's just more work always than there are people to do it, it feels like, you know. And so every day is a struggle for me. Lately, I've been actually doing really well lately. I kind of like you know, I just turned 41, so I was like, okay, I got to get it together. All right. So I've been working out every day.
Okay.
I've been trying to do a regular meditation practice. And even just something simple like 3 minutes in the morning and 3 minutes at night. I've been eating different, so, you know, trying to eat healthy. But I think I have to work regular practice into my life. So, I mean, for me, I think the thing that's most important is like contemplative practice. So really like meditation. Okay. Or, you know, I grew up Christian. I'm an Episcopalian. Okay. But this necklace that I have on is Kuan Yin, who's the Asian Buddhist deity. She's actually a bodhisattva. She's the goddess of compassion for like Chinese Buddhists. And so I'm interested, obviously, in Buddhism. That's my family. My ancestors were likely Buddhist. My great grandparents. So I think for me, spirituality and contemplative practice have been really helpful. Okay.
So are you in a room somewhere? Are you what kind of environment do you kind of set yourself up in to where you're kind of in that zone to?
I mean, meditation. So I've done, there's a place called the East Bay Meditation Center. Okay. And I'm giving them a shout out.
Yeah, that's all right. That's cool. East Bay, what up? East Bay Meditation.
So they have like a Thursday night sit for people. They have a different sit every night. And so it's actually like if you're like a beginning meditator, it's better to do it in a community. Just like working out, you know, if you like.
Really?
Like, I think that a lot of people, you know, it's hard for them to work out, like, get one of those tapes and then just do it in your living room.
What
you know, like those workout tapes. I mean.
Yes, I got
stream
it.
On Netflix.
Right, I got it. Tapes.
No, they do though. They still sell DVDs or whatever.
Yes, they do. Yes.
And so people just, but a lot of people need to actually be in a gym where the person next to you is running, and so then you're like, okay, I just gotta. So I think meditation is the same. If you're sitting in a room with 50 other people and everyone is.
Now, are you concentrating on the person next to you?
No, everyone is quiet. Okay. Then I think it helps to reinforce the practice.
Okay, I get a little self-conscious if somebody's next to me.
Oh, interesting.
And a little bit more meditative than me.
Oh, you're comparing and contrast.
Yeah.
That's called comparing, contrasting minds.
Is that?
It's just something to watch. It's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
So yeah, but like now I just meditate in my living room, or like sometimes just like, lately one thing I've been doing is when I come home. Before I get out the car, I just sit in my car, because once I get in my house, I'm like, oh, I got to do the laundry and I got to pay this bill, blah, blah, the dishes, I get distracted. So when I'm in my car, there's really nothing else for me to do there. So I just shut the engine off, and I put my timer on my iPhone.
Okay.
And on a very gentle sounding chime.
Okay.
And then I press 5 minutes or whatever, and I sit for 5 minutes in my car.
Oh.
So it can be anywhere. You could be on the bus. You could be anywhere.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Meditation's free and it's easy.
What other now? Food we'll get into a little bit later.
Okay.
That's
one of my favorite things to talk about.
but want to get into a little bit more about being in this field. The sacrifices, the time, the commitment. Without getting too deep into it, it's just like, how are you able to negotiate relationships?
Yeah, good question.
Right? It's like, you're deep into this. You're fighting the revolution. It's like you're in the movement, and there's other things going on too, right? And so, part of it is also just kind of finding out, just in terms of how are you negotiating, relationships and having a life, and, with other people, and
Yeah, I mean, there's not an easy answer to that question. I do think, I think that living the life of an activist or an organizer or someone who thinks of themselves as having a certain kind of political commitment is a very particular kind of choice. It's a kind of lifestyle, you know what I mean? And look, most of the people that I am in the movement with have relationships and families. So I would say that it's not like it's impossible.
Right.
But for me, I have to say that I think it's been a struggle. I'm not that available, is the truth. I work many evenings, most Saturdays, and I'm talking about for 20 years straight. You know what I mean? Last night we were meeting till 8:30. The night before there was programming going on till 9, which I was not at, but one of my staff members was at. And so it does put strain on availability to hang out with friends or date or any of those things, And so I think it's something that I have struggled with, trying to find balance. You know what I mean? There's not a simple or easy answer to it,
Mm-hmm.
And at different times in my life, I think I think that in my 20s, for me personally, maybe my 20s and 30s, I didn't think that I could manage starting a family and working like I do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And, now that I'm moving into my 40s, I feel like I have to think about that balance differently. You know what I mean? Because, it's how do you stay in this work and have longevity if you're so burnt out all the time? You know what I mean? So last year, I was able to take a little, it's not quite a sabbatical, but I took an 8-week break.
Okay.
I think technically a sabbatical is a year. So I took
That's right. It's just.
Yeah, but I got to take a break.
Right.
And I didn't really do, I did reading and reflecting, But I didn't have like a big agenda, and I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to travel to, Asia and blah, blah. I didn't do any of those things.
Okay.
I just stayed here in Oakland. I like took yoga classes and cooked and had days where the pace of the day could just be slower.
Right.
Because this is, this kind of job, it's like you're always having to think like 3 steps ahead, and every 30 minutes is planned out for 2 weeks in advance.
So you're during the sabbatical, you were, yoga, cooking. Were you planning any grand menu, or were you just like, I'm gonna go to the store, I'm gonna see what's what's happening?
I'm
Trader
not,
Joe's.
I can cook real basic stuff, but I'm not I'm not that creative.
So was that helpful though, in terms of just mellowing out and just kind of relaxing?
Yeah.
How was the food?
The food I think it was healthier. Because when I'm ripping and running, I'm eating Chipotle bowls, and sometimes that was my problem before. That's what I'm trying to break that habit. But you get so busy, you're back-to-back meetings and phone calls and this, and you're rushing over to this meeting, and then it's oh my God, it's 4:00, I haven't eaten anything.
Right.
And then you're starving, and you go to Taco Bell and get the worst possible, so come in a meeting.
Chalupas.
Not Chalupa, I'm not quite that far, but I come in a meeting with some kind of KFC cup or something, and my coworkers are like, do you know that every day we yell at the youth for bringing that up in here, and now here comes Nicole into the meeting, into the youth center, carrying it.
That's part of the struggle, right? That's part of the struggle.
Yes, that is part of the struggle.
Okay, that's cool. And so, did you find, so after the sabbatical, were you able to kind of, at the end of it, were you able to kind of tell yourself I'm feeling a little bit recharged and ready to go again? And
yeah, definitely. But I think what's more important, and this is, I actually meet with a spiritual teacher regularly, so that's really helpful. And talk about these issues like balance and ironically, how I was talking about organizing is about people restoring their own dignity, but then the discipline of organizing in and of itself can be really dehumanizing sometimes, because you're just, you're working so much that you lose the time to experience your full humanity. You know what I mean? So I think what's more important is not sort of taking a long break. I mean, I think it's good to do that once in a while, but what's more important is how do you build it into your life on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that's what I feel like I'm trying to get at now. And yeah, we're going to hire another person. So we're hoping that helps distribute the work a little better.
Right.
But also just, finding that making the time to go to the gym, making the time to meditate, making the time to hang out with friends, having a full weekend where I'm you know what? I'm not going to work for 2 straight days.
Right.
Yeah.
And so so then when you go out, what are you doing? I know music is big part of your life.
It is. And it's a struggle,
especially being in Oakland. Move this over a little bit more.
It's a little bit of a struggle for me, I have to say, the older I get, because my music taste is, I guess it's not age appropriate. And so, the older I get, the less and less people I can find to go to see.
Really?
To see live music with, yeah. Because
expand on that,
so okay, this is a really tame one, but so I went to go see. So my friend Tracy and I went to go see J. Cole the other day.
Okay.
Because he's on tour,
right? And
so he was here in Oakland at Oracle, and Tracy's in her 30s, sort of the early side of her mid-30s, and I'm 41, and so we walk up in there, and everyone is all millennials, 16,000 millennials, which, I mean, it is what it is. But so just I want to go see,
live shows.
I want to see, live shows.
And
the music that I like.
How was it?
It was dope. J. Cole is really amazing. I like him. A lot of people have differing opinions about him, apparently, than I see on social media, but I think he's incredible. I think he's a breath of fresh air. Yeah, it was dope.
What other, I know, what other music, because Oakland, again, just coming back to your hometown, Oakland, growing up, music obviously is phenomenal.
Yeah.
In terms of you're looking at just culture in general. What kind of music were you listening to as you were growing up?
I became a teenager in the 90s, and that was really like the renaissance, the heyday of like
the golden
age of hip hop, yeah, and particularly Oakland at that time, like played hip hop and R&B, which Oakland played like a really big role in terms of influencing. There was like a sound coming out of Oakland that went all over the country, and so that's the time that I grew up. So obviously Too Short, E40, he's obviously not from Oakland,
right?
Vallejo, but Bay Area music. I was listening to, everybody, Mac Mall, In Vogue,
right.
Tony,
right.
Who right now, like all these other people, Ty Dolla $ign, and I mean, there's a lot of actually remakes of Oakland songs right now, because like the 90s has come back, the 90s is in right now. So there's like a remake of one of Too Short's like classic songs called Freaky Tales.
Right.
That is got some inappropriate content. But it's Too Short. So Yo Gotti and Nicki Minaj remade, sort of like did a homage to that song. And then Ty Dolla $ign and Chris Brown or somebody have a song that's like a remake of one of Tony songs. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, that I know definitely for you, it's a really big part of just who you are.
Yeah, it is.
It
is, and the other thing for me is like it's culture is so transformative, and it's a big part of my activism, to be honest. Like our organization has always really been known for using culture as a way to like amplify and galvanize our base. You know what I mean? And so like. It's not just that it's like it influenced me definitely in terms of my own personal identity, but it definitely also influences like our work a lot. Yeah,
absolutely. So, in the position that you're in now, what do you hold for the future of Oakland? What kind of thoughts do you have in terms of how Oakland is changing?
Yeah.
I was listening to the radio early this morning. They were talking about Oakland as basically West Brooklyn, right? Meaning, the changing of Brooklyn in the East, it's happening here.
Yeah.
And so what do you see in terms of you remaining in Oakland, the future of it?
I mean, to be honest, there are moments where I feel disillusioned about it, and where I start to think like maybe I shouldn't stay here, which is really heartbreaking because it's such a big part of who I am. It's such a big part of my identity, The Oakland that I grew up in, like I said earlier, was a city that was actually it was a predominantly black city actually, and it was a overwhelmingly majority people of color city. And it's a city that has really deep histories for Mexican Americans, Chinese Americans, African Americans, and indigenous folks actually. Like really long and rich histories in this city, just this little teeny city of ours, And so what feels hard about this moment is that there's this like sudden wave, and actually white immigrant folks also, let me just say that. So like Italian and Portuguese communities. And so I think for all of us who are the long-term residents of Oakland, no matter what background you come from, it feels, really disruptive. Like there's this wave of people coming in and who don't know the history of this city. And I don't want to like make huge blanket assumptions, but many of whom, don't even know to ask about the history of the city. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so it just feels like that there's this like threat of all of this richness, like the integrity of who we are as a community being wiped out in like 10 years. You know what I mean? And you know, it's hard because like for a long time, Oakland struggled, you know, like really struggled economically. And, you know, we experienced as a city, you know, white flight, like in the 60s and jobs leaving.
Right.
And, you know, the city was really economically stranded for a long time, like the time that I grew up. And so there were just rows of places. I mean, there's still rows of places like in East Oakland and West Oakland where there used to be thriving businesses. And now it's just like these sort of like abandoned looking, you know, storefronts. And so it just feels like the people of Oakland, the long-term residents of Oakland, we held the city down like through the toughest of times. And now money's coming back in, and the first people to get pushed out are the long-term residents of Oakland. And so it's like prosperity or wealth is coming back in, but the people who held the city down during the tough times don't get to participate in it or take advantage of it or, you know, benefit from it. And so that feels really like a betrayal, actually. It feels like a deep betrayal. So, you know, I also, though, know that Oakland is a city that has a lot of fight. And so I just think that, you know, that's what we have to do. We have to get up. We have to make our voices heard. And one friend of mine, his name is Derek Smith. He was actually my RA at NA at UC Santa Cruz.
Okay.
At Oaks. Oaks.
Shout out to Oaks.
You know, I was like, you know, ranting about how I was feeling disillusioned about gentrification. This was a couple of years ago, and Derek said something like, well, the thing about it is that it's in us. So like, we grew up in Oakland, and Oakland is not just like a place that's external to us, it's actually inside of us. And so no matter what happens or no matter where we go, like there's nothing that can take that away. You know what I mean? So that kind of makes me feel, that gives me some hope and resolve. Yeah.
On that note, we're going to go ahead. We're going to do the final three. This is the final three.
Okay.
These questions are basically, I'm going to ask every guest.
Okay, awesome.
At the end. So, number one, you know, if you were to do any other job than what you're doing now, what would it be? You don't have to answer that. Or you could also, you know.
Okay, I have two.
Oh, you got two?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, let's do it.
So one is, I know this is weird, but like, so one is like home decor.
All right.
I'm interested in like
okay.
design and aesthetics, and I think that it would be really fun to do that. So like design interior spaces.
That would be like a.
It's kind of bougie, though, you know.
No, that's all right. It's almost like a. How would you say? You could go into like this social justice feng shui route, right? Like, how do you?
The other is nails. I know it's very toxic, so obviously that's a huge concern. But
nails as in cuticle.
Yeah, and I don't even have my nails done. But I'm OCD, so I really like small, to focus on like details.
Okay.
And so nail art is interesting to me.
Really. So, say you open up a shop. Any particular design that you would like come off the bat with?
I don't know. I mean, there are, you know, nail artists actually who do like social justice nails.
Really?
Yeah, and actually there's an organizer. She runs a youth organization that's right on the floor below us here, named Kim Yoshi, who does it as a hobby. And Kim did Tupac nails for me one time, which were really amazing. But she stopped doing it.
I'm gonna have to hit up Kim Yoshi one of these days.
Yeah, she stopped doing it, unfortunately. But she did the dopest nails I've ever had.
All right. Any upcoming projects that you're willing to share with us?
Sure, yeah. Right now, we're actually working on a campaign to support a young man who was 17 years old. He was a high school football star on the Climans here in West Oakland, and he got arrested and is being charged with a robbery, but the DA's office filed him into, and it was a robbery that occurred and no one was injured, like physically injured. And the DA's office, despite the fact that he was 17, so he should have been in the juvenile system, right, they filed him directly into adult court. And she has said on record in front of us that they only do that in the most extreme of cases. And so it's pretty clear that that's not the case, because this was not an extreme case. He had no prior contact with the criminal justice system. This was the first thing that he ever got in trouble for. And so anyway, since then, he's been jailed. He's been languishing in Santa Rita jail for 4 years, just awaiting trial, not even having been convicted of anything yet. He happens to be the cousin of one of our members in our Black men's group called Determination. And so we decided that we wanted to get the community together and support him and support his case. So we're pushing that he either be transferred back to juvenile court. In adult court, he could face up to like 60 years. So for a first time thing that happened when he was 17 years old, it's like the rest of his life, And so we don't think that that's right. And we think that this disproportionately happens to Black and brown young people. This boy, he's big. He's a big kid, And I think a lot of times, for boys of color, they get adultified, So the system or people look at him and they don't see a kid, but he is a kid. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, we just think that it's not right. And so we don't think any young person deserves to be in adult court, because they're young people. And so they have their lives ahead of them, and they deserve a chance to figure it out and turn, even if they did do something.
So what is your organization doing in terms of kind of getting that word out?
Yeah, so we're doing a rally actually next Thursday, the 17th.
17th, okay.
At 8:30 a.m. at the Renee C. Davidson Courthouse, which is across the street from Lake Merritt here in Oakland.
Okay.
So if you're in the area, definitely come by and support. There's also a petition. His name is Dejan Ford. So if you Google Dejan Ford, you can find information, or go to our website.
Yeah, we'll definitely put that information out
Awesome.
on our links as well. And so finally, this is the buffet. We're going to end a little bit on just kind of the food and music as well. So in terms of a meal that you would like to either create yourself or would like to partake in having, one, what would it be? And two, what kind of music would you pair that with?
Okay, so I would like to have like really good sushi, like the kind where the sushi
is big on your,
like the kind where there's like one sushi chef and just like 6 or 8 people, and it's like the serious kind of sushi.
Okay.
Yeah.
As opposed to conveyor belt sushi.
Yes, exactly. As opposed to conveyor belt sushi.
Okay.
And then I would pair that with.
Now, is there a particular sushi's right? There's all kinds of fish, right?
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Shellfish, but is there a particular type of sushi that you were like, damn, I gotta have that. This is it.
I mean, hamachi is my favorite.
Okay.
I know it's kind of boring. But
okay.
Maybe a boring answer, but that's my favorite. But at this one, I'm not going to tell you guys who this is because I don't want everybody going there. But at this one sushi, with this one sushi chef, I like his uni. And uni is a little, I was reluctant, I'll just say.
Okay.
But his uni.
It's got to be good.
It's good. Yeah.
It's got to be good.
Yeah.
Right.
I would pair
the foie gras of the sea.
It is. I've never actually, I can't even pronounce that, the French thing you just said. I would pair it with 21 Savage bank account.
Fascinating.
It's my new favorite song of the day.
All right. So you heard that. Thank you, Nicole Lee.
Thanks for having me. Thanks,
episode 2 of the buffet. We'll hopefully be coming on with more interviews coming up soon. So stay tuned on that. But thank you.
Thank you. Such an honor. I appreciate it.
Urban Peace Movement, Oakland. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. On that note, we'll see you later. Bye.